Begin the current Daf, Mesech Yevamos Daf Yomi. Begin 4 lines down with the top of the Yomim, where the Gemara is in the middle of a discussion from the previous Daf. And the reason why the Gemara brought this in was because of a line in our Mishnah, which we're going to elaborate on later on, that said that, interestingly, we had this machlekes, although from the beginning of Mesechta we were assuming this Isra of Tzaras Erva. This was a big discussion of Litzra, that Tzara is also forbidden. Mishama actually did not hold the drush of Litzra at all. Mishama held what's wrong with the Tzara, the Erva, there's no Isra Erva. And actually the Tzara's Erva is permitted. And therefore comes out, Yuj Naf Kamina says our Mishnah, that if the Nisyamu, according to Beis Shammai, they're going to be kosher. According to Beis Hillel, they're going to be mamzerim. And even so, they didn't stop marrying each other. Now, related to that, the Gemara introduced the Mishnah Masechtas Megillah, that said that the people, as we know, have different zmanim, bizmanehem of learning the Megillah, 11 and 12, 13, 14, 15, and Rish Lakish has Rabbi Yochanan says, I'd like this guy to do. And Rabbi Yochanan said, why don't you ask him somewhere else? He says, no, that's minig, I'm talking about Isser. And that's what the Gemara is in the middle of a discussion regarding the opinion of Beis Shammai, that, what do you do with Beis Shammai Hillel? And that's the middle of a discussion regarding if Beis Shammai actually followed their own opinion or they did not follow their opinion. And if they did follow their own opinion, that's what the Gemara is going to ask. That I'd like this guy to do. They lived in the same towns. How could they have gone and done their own opinion? I would be remiss if we didn't mention the Maran Sahat Torah, who someone just told me right now the kfur is actually happening right now. It's obviously be a Leila Nishmasai, and it should inspire us, because he would make us see him on Kol Kula every single year, and we should also learn, and the ideas that we get of a Daf Yomi is a similar zach. And he was inspiration for a generation where you can learn and get ideas HaTorah, and that's it's a sniff of that is by us learning Daf Yomi. We get also the ideas HaTorah shall be zeichet to be inspired and to follow in his holy ways. Some of this we're going to discuss in today's Daf are latest goydu. Like we said, the latest goydu means leisasa agudis. That you shouldn't go ahead and make different groups of people where, like Rashi says, nirin kenegin based tires, it looks like as if there's two different tires. They're doing like this, they're doing like that. And the Rambam, however, he says differently. He says that this is what causes actually to machlekes gedolos. If everyone's doing their own thing, so it looks like different types of, as if the Torah is not one. And the Gemara brings in a machlekes, which we mentioned in the previous Daf on top of the summit, if asu Beis Shammai kedivreim, or did they not do like kedivreim? Did they follow Beis Hillel, or did they follow their own opinion? Imashkechem Baskol is the conversation, do we pay attention to Baskol when it comes to following halacha? We have 3 machlekes regarding what makes a mamzer. I want to know what makes a mamzer. So the Chacham hold mamzer is from chiv krisis, but if it's just a chiv alav and it's just a negative prohibition to marry that woman, that would not make a mamzer. Kiva holds, yes, mamzer mechiv alav, even if it's just a negative prohibition to marry that woman, that union would create a mamzer. And Yeshua holds, no, the most lenient. A mamzer is only from chiv Mrs. Bezdin. So even if there's a chiv of kares, that would not create a child who is a mamzer. So like we said on the Gemara's previous stuff, this was the conversation regarding like this going to do regarding going ahead and making different groups. So we're 4 lines down at the top of the Yom Daf Yomi and Aleph, which we already mentioned this machlekes of Rav and Shmuel, of Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Did Beis Shammai follow their own opinion or not? So now the Gemara says emas. Says the Gemara, when exactly was this that Beis Shammai did their own opinion or did they not do their own opinion? As follows. What's the conversation? What's the question? If it's before the heavenly voice came out, which the Gemara brings an Erev in the first peg that Yedgimel Beis, that a Baskol came out and said, Halacha Kebeisel. So if it's before the Baskol came out, so my time of the man also, what's the reason of the ones who say that Beis Shammai did not follow their own opinion? Why wouldn't they follow their own opinion? That was their leadership, that was their Rav, that was their Rebbe, Shammai, and why would they have not followed their own opinion rather like Basil? Velo Achabaskal. So, and if it was after the heavenly voice, which Hashem already, so to speak, announced that we follow Basil, so my time also. So what's the reason, like the ones who say that Beis Shammai did their own opinion? If from Shemaim they're saying halach is like Basil. So the Gemara explains, I could give you both ways. If you want, you could say it was before the heavenly voice. If you want, you could say it's after the heavenly voice. And I can still explain the machlekes of both opinions, if asu or lo yasu. If you want, you could say it was before the heavenly voice. So then the question is, if it's before the heavenly voice, how do we understand the one that says that they did not follow their own opinion? Oh, because if we're going to Beis Hillel Ruba, we're talking about with the school of Hill were the majority. So the Gemara explains. Lamanda Bali also according to one that says that they did not follow their own opinion. Okay, because the Beis Hillel Ruba. Although the school of Shammai held one way, but we go after the Roy, and Beis Hillel had the multitudes, and therefore they went after Beis Hillel. Mandam also, so what's on the pshat in the one who says that they did like their own opinion? Kiyaz in the Basar Ruba, when they go after the majority, when they're the equivalent, when they're equal in wisdom. But the school of Shammai was sharper. They were more incisive and decisive, and therefore the Beis Shammai held, no, we don't go after the majority of Beis Hillel, and therefore they went after their own opinion. So that's one mahalach in the machlokes if Asur Beis Shammai like their own opinion or not. That's if it was before the Baskel. And people say malacha Baskel, and if you want, you could say it's Tumat after the heavenly voice. So Mandam also the one that says that they did not follow their own opinion. Okay, because they're not Baskel. The heavenly voice came out and said, "Halacha like Beis Hillel." From Shemayim, they're telling us for states if they're not going to do it like their own opinion. Well, Mandam also is what's pshat in the Mandam who says that they went and followed their own opinion even after the Baskel. To be sure, it's going to be sure, which is brought in Perek Hazav and Bab Metzia. The one that he says, "Ein mashkichim bevaskel." We don't pay attention to heavenly voice. Now, actually, that Rabbi Shua was a famous story with Rabbi Lazar. That they said, okay, let the walls of the Beis Medrash prove, let this tree get uprooted, and they're having this whole thing. And they said from Shemayim. And Shemayim, they said, halacha is like Rabbi Lazar. When Yeshua gets up on his feet, he says, we don't care, we don't pay attention to what Shemayim is saying. Lo b'Shemayim, and he says, the halacha is not Rabbi Lazar. So Taisa asked, says, what's Takab Pshat? Why did they not follow the Baskel for Rabbi Lazar? But and we say everywhere that he's Shamuti, and the halacha is not like him, even though from Shemayim they announce like him. Yet the Baskel Beis Hillel we do pay attention to. How can we talk about Baskel? What's the difference between those two Baskels? There they didn't pay attention, and Lamais us. And the halacha we do pass like Beis Hillel. Taisa has two pshat. In the first pshat he says because the Baskel Beis Hillel was only for his honor. When he said Shemayim Yechichu, like the Gemara says, they just wanted they didn't want him to be embarrassed. From Shemayim they says halacha like him, but wasn't really to tell us that halacha is like Rabbi Lazar, and therefore they didn't follow. But the Baskel Beis Hillel wasn't to protect the dignity of Beis Hillel, and therefore that's why we say that halacha is like Beis Hillel. Now the Gemara concludes the question really what was started from the previous daf. Says the Gemara, okay, Umanda Asu, according to the one that says that they did follow their own opinions. The problem is, the pasuk says, don't make loitas agudais, don't make different groupings. So, but you have Beis Shammai permitting the tzaros to the brothers, and you have Beis Hillel saying that it's aser, and they're having like two different tyrus. I thought you told me that it says loitas goidu, as we said from the previous daf, that it could have said loitu goidu, it says loitis goidu, to tell you two halachas. One is you now cut your flesh when the person dies. Another one is, which is very appropriate now. This, if you said that when someone passes on, we don't go ahead and do more. We understand that there's a greater world after that, and also don't make different agudas. So how could Beis Shammai still be doing their own opinions? So Abaya says what answers all the questions. He says, "Kiyamin leitus goidu." When do we say this isra of leitus goidu? If you have two courts in one city. One court says like it rules like the opinion of Beis Shammai, but one rules like the opinion of Beis Hillel. But they have two courts in two different cities, so there's no problem for like this guy to do. So the fact that there's some like do like Beis Shammai do Beis Hillel is not a problem because in this city they do like this, and this city they do like that. That would not be a violation like this guy do. But the Gemara says, wait a second. I'm like Rabbi says, but Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, at times you had Tamidei Beis Shammai, Tamid Beis Hillel living in the same town, and you have one court is saying like Shammai, one court saying like Beis Hillel. So why was that not a problem of loitus goidu? So Elam Rabba, rather Rabba qualifies it a little bit further. He says Kirmin loitus goidu. When do we say this is a loitus goidu? Is Kikuin be'ed bezin be'er achas. There's one court in one city. Plag ma'in kedibur Beis Shammai. Half rule like the opinion Beis Shammai, uplag money get Beis Hillel, and half rule like the opinion Beis Hillel. That would be a problem about like this goidu. You go to this on this bezdin to that group and to that group from that same bezdin. That's a problem. But two courts in one city that actually is not a problem. Which Taisa asked, if you recall from the previous daf, what started this conversation was a Mishnah Masechtas Megillah. The problem is we said Megillah is nikris b'yud aleph b'yud beis b'yud gimel b'daled. Now, who lanes on Yud Aleph? What do you mean Yud Aleph? It says in the Yud Aleph, the Tezvah. Oh, so that was the Bnei HaKfarim, the people from the villages. that Magdim Liyam Knisa, when they're anyways coming to the cities, so that they can be Masabkin, Maim Muslim, Lachem Shabbasadis, so we let them lay it on your Dalad. So wait a second, when they come to the city, they're going to lay it on your Dalad. The people from the city, they're going to lay it on, let's say, your Beis. People from the city laying your Dalad. So how are you answering? It's in the same city, from the same Bezdin, that two people are acting in two different ways. So how are you answering that question of the Megillah? How are you laying in the same city on two different times? So actually, not like Rashi in Megillah, Rabbi Chaim Kohen says, Tyson brings, that actually the people in the village were actually laying in their own city, as he proves from the Yerushalmi. And now it's like two but they did in two different cities, where there's not a problem like this going to do, even according to Abai. So why is it called Yom HaKnisa? So he actually says, not like the Pasha B'Shad, says in their own cities they would gather to come to shul in the villages on Mondays and Thursdays to lay from the term. They used to daven by themselves. Mutig and they would come to shul so that they could lay because they wanted to become the midst of Kriyas HaTorah. And he says that Yom HaKnisa means in their own cities. And he proves it, he says, because the Yerushalmi brings that if a person from the city cannot be moitzi the chiyuv of a ben akfar, because he's not mechuyev on the 12th of Adar, so how could he be moitzi the 12th of Adar for a person from the village? So he says, since the bnei kfar obviously had to lay in for themselves, so then they obviously then did it in their own cities. Why they would do it in the big cities? But be that as it may, that's how it resolves the question, which actually started this conversation with Rish Lakish in the previous stuff. That that's not a problem. But later go do laying on different dates because it was two bati din in what? Besmaneim. Right. The only question is about how did they do that? Why is that not a violation of? Yeah, but that's not Minatayr. Those are different Kabbalah. How did Chazal do that? Those were the sages. So after Nesina Satayr, how did they go ahead and do that? So that's he says that's not a problem. But like this guy do because it's like two batidin in two different ayadas. So says the Gemara Vaita. The Gemara says Tashema. The Gemara comes to bring a raya regarding this issue of loitus goydu. It says, "B'mekayim shel Rabbi Eliezer, how you curse in eitzim, they used to chop down wood. Last b'chamed b'Shabbos because they wanted to make a coal on Shabbos for Shabbos itself. Why? Last is barzel to make iron. Why? Because they wanted to make the mila knife. Because Rabbi Eliezer holds machshir mitzvah, a preparatory act for preparing for a mitzvah is actually Deicha Shabbos, just like the mitzvah itself. And actually, Taisa says they deliberately used to do that because they wanted to show how precious is the mitzvah, that even Hefsher mitzvah, so the Davka would wait for Shabbos to chop down the tree, to make the charcoal, to make the iron, to do the bris milah. Because they wanted to show how precious it is that they did not be Deicha Shabbos. So too, but Mekamish Rabbi Yosef Glili, we're showing how there are different locations that did different interesting halachas, again, based on their halacha of their Rav. They used to eat chicken with milk. Why? Because he darshan, it says, now they have meat with the milk of its mother, which is telling us a creature that has mother's milk. But chicken, a fowl, they don't have milk. So therefore there's no problem, as the Gemara says, for b'chalev imay. So in his town, they would have chicken together with milk. So the Gemara makes a deep. The first halacha was telling us that where Rabbi Eliezer lived, they used to chop down the wood on Shabbos. It sounds like, okay, where Rabbi Eliezer lived, yes, but Rabbi Kiva light. Why Rabbi Kiva not? Because then we learned in a brisa. Rabbi Kiva tells a rule regarding bris milah, regarding what's prohibited on Shabbos. Rabbi Kiva said that any malacha that you could have done from before Shabbos, in a Deicha Shabbos, not Deicha Shabbos. So you could have chopped down the tree, you could have made the coal, you could have made the knife for the bris milah. That you can do on Shabbos. Now, the problem is that why is there no halacha of like this guy to do? Some are chopping down trees, and some are screaming Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. What is this? Is it two different tires? So the Gemara says, "What do you mean? So what are you asking a question? You told me before that within two different places, one town where Rabbi Kiva's derub, or one place where Rabbi Eliezer derub. So that's not a problem. You told me that's not a problem. It's good. What are you asking even?" So the Gemara says, "Taka, such a good kasha. With the Ka'arila, the one who did bring this, my Ka'arila, why is he bringing this? We already answered that like this guy doesn't apply to it. Why is he asking such a question?" Says, "I'll tell you why." So you would have thought to say, since Shabbos is so severe, we would consider it as if it is in one place, and therefore not like Abaye who says that when it's in the same town, it's going to be forbidden in with two different bezdins. Kamash Malan, that we're telling you that no, that as long as it's in two different places, it's not going to be a problem. Even though it's Shabbos, it's still going to be permitted that some are chopping down trees and some are not chopping down trees on Shabbos. So the Gemara says Toshmat being another raya regarding this Issa like this Goidu. So the Bavo ki iklo la asir Rabbi Shloimy Levi. When he would go to the place of Rabbi Shloimy Levi, have metal to shraga, then he actually would move a lamp which was lit on Shabbos and went out, was extinguished, because Rabbi Shua held like Rabbi Shimon, who, as Masechet Shabbos has mentioned many times, doesn't hold a muktzah. Meaning basically most things he holds a lot of move. And since it's not a lit candle right now, so he would move it when he went to visit Rabbi Shloimy Levi on Shabbos. When he would come to the town of Rabbi Yechon, when he was a guest, Rabbi Yechon, then he would not move a lamp, because Rabbi Yechon held like Rabbi Yehuda, that's very strict with muktzah. And even if it's Shaloi Machmasis, Rabbi Yehuda held it's forbidden. For sure, over here it's Muktzah Machmasisa, because it was something that's used for something that's a prohibited act on Shabbos, like a lit candle. So therefore, he would not move it then. So that's the Gemara Shaila. I mean, that looks like two different tires, because what's going on over here? Here he's moving a lamp, and he's not moving the candelabra. So which Tosfos asks, he says, what do you mean? Why can't you say that, as we said this on the previous Daf this Svara, that the one who sees says he just doesn't have to move it today? We said, like when someone's not doing malach, we said, okay, no one knows that he's because of the halacha. It's just a tit nashar b'tan. So here also, how do you know by him not moving it? So Tosfos actually has interesting. He says, no, even if it would fall on his talus, and it would make it all schmitzig and it's ruining it, he still wouldn't move it. So that would be obvious. That's because of the halacha, not because you don't need to. So therefore, again, that looks like two different tires. So the Gemara says, what type of question is this? Didn't we say place are different? When he was Rabbi Shloimy Levi, was one thing. When he was Rabbi Yechon, it was a different thing. That was the halacha of that makim. So why is that a problem about like this guy? Says Gemara, you're right. That wasn't really our question. We were saying like this. Rebavo himself, how did he have different halachas for his own self in one place moving the lamp, in one place not? How did you hold? Why in one place was he doing one thing, in one place did he do something else? So that's not difficult. He really held Rabbi Shloimy Levi that, like Rabbi Shimon, the more lenient, you allowed to move a lamp that the light went out on Shabbos. When he came to Rabbi Yechon, they wouldn't move it because of the honor of Rabbi Yechon, that Rabbi Yechon held its aser, so that's why he wouldn't move it, but not because he be'etzim held it was aser. Now Tosfos actually asked interesting. He says, although in Masechet Shabbos, Rabbi Yechon himself rules like Rabbi Shimon regarding Muktzah Machmasisa, so how can you say Rabbi Yechon holds its aser if he himself holds like Rabbi Shimon? So very important and very practical halacha in the Hilchos Shabbos HaMuktzah. Says Tosfos, no, he was talking about, as he brings from Rashi, that it was lit on that Shabbos. That was the light there that was lit on Friday night. Where that's mocham and then stam muktzah machmasis. It's not like a regular lamp where it wasn't lit, because here you actively rejected it. You were dachi b'yidayim. You lit it, and therefore that has a more severe level of muktzah. And therefore Rabbi Yechanan, even though he generally holds like Rabbi Shimon, will hold that was going to be aser. Even though Rabbi Vo in that case held that it was mutter, but again because of the covenant of Rabbi Yechanan, he wouldn't move it over there.
What you're supposed to do if you go to another town, you're supposed to do what they do.
Well,
why do you have to go through this whole thing? Just say that you go to that town, you do what they do. You go to your
right.
Same person.
That's if it's meaning a makim.
Even here, when we're saying this makim did this and this bezdin said that makim did that. So what are you supposed to?
You want to say that if someone goes to Rabbi Yechanan's town, he can't move muktzah?
I don't know. I would think that.
That's if it's meaning a makim. I don't know if that's considered meaning a makim. If Rabbi Yechanan for his people would rule that like a more severe interpretation of muktzah. I don't think Rabbi Vo was mechuyev to not move muktzah. It's not a minig hamokim type of thing. That's a minig hamokim is that it's a minig.
It's not like it's good if you go to this.
That's like it's good. That's what
worse. Sounds like it's worse.
What?
Sounds worse.
Like this goydu would mean that they're in the town. They're doing. No, I'm saying meaning that these two different. He's saying that if someone does like a psak, like one thing, you want to know that should be like this goydu. One guy is doing.
What the mice that people do? It says this town paskin this, that town paskin this. It's not like this goydu. So the guy went to the other town. It was okay.
He's saying that should be a problem like this. Well, why do you have to say this whole shmooze? Why can't you say that it would be a problem of like this guy do if he does like a different thing. Is that considered? It doesn't sound like that, because if a guy, someone from Beis Shammai goes to Beis Hill's town or whatever, someone that is that like this guy, that doesn't sound like it. It sounds like this guy do is a gudis. That's not a gudis. That's like an individual. It's just doing like a different psak. And then it's like someone b'nei Yisrael coming to Chutz La'aretz. It's not like this guy do. It's different halacha. Yeah, yesh lad. So the Gemara says Ayvah Keshama, which the way Rashi says, Teis Hashem doesn't like Rashi, but the way Rashi says it is that, what's the shamish of a Rebbe, who he's not going to understand this, and he always sees the Rebbe always moving the leichter. So when he's going to go to the town of Rabbi Yechanan, he's not going to realize he's going to move it. That's how Rashi explains the Gemara's question. So the Gemara, he's going to let him know that has of two. We're going to Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Yechanan halts us, don't move the leichter. So that's how he avoided this problem about, not, for the covenant of Rabbi Yechanan, not to have them move. But upon them, it doesn't tell us anything regarding this Isser of Leitus Goyim. Someone says Toshima, and this is why we introduced this whole discussion, because it relates to halacha of our Mishnah. Like we said, if Beis Shammai did like their own opinion or not, which we were asking this question about Leitus Goyim, so he said, okay, that's not a problem, because they wouldn't be on the same bezdin in the same city. So that's was a Toshima. We had this machlekes if Beis Shammai did like their own opinion or not. So the Mishnah said, although that these people said it's us and these said it's permitted, meaning Beis Shammai still had a machlekes. Neither one stopped from marrying the wives of the women from the other camps. So it says the Gemara like this: if you say Beis Shammai did not do like their own opinions, so therefore, of course, they didn't hold back from marrying the wives of Beis Hill, because they held like Beis Hill. They followed on practically Beis Hill. Everyone's doing like Beis Hill. But if the school of Shammai did like their own opinions, so why didn't they hold back from marrying the women of Hill? As the Gemara explains, we understand why actually Beis Shammai did not stop marrying the women of Beis Hill, because the Bnei Chibalav did. Meaning the women of the school of Hill, what did they do that's problematic to Beis Shammai? Beis Hill held that the tsaris of an erva is like the erva herself. So what happens to her? She goes free. She marries whoever she wants to. The moment her husband dies, she goes scot-free. There's no yibum, no chalitza. Now, according to Beis Shammai, that's a problem. What's the problem? Because a tzara that's going to the marketplace, meaning marrying some other person without chalitza, it's a problem, because you need chalitza. You're a Yevamos Daf. Now, but that's just a negative prohibition of lisi eishes hamesachutza. Mamzer is only from chiba krisis, as the Gemara says later on. It's not mem testament alf. So at most it's b'nei chiva. The children of that union, that this woman just walked away and married some random guy, is a negative prohibition. And Tosis asks, what do you mean? Why would Shammai not be concerned about marrying the women of Hill because of its tzara herself? Tzara herself is a negative prohibition, so they should be meaning the children of Chibalav, there's nothing wrong with them. You don't make a mom, so there's nothing wrong with the child. But what's with the tzaras themselves? Why are they saying that we know why they didn't hold back? But what's with the tzaras? So they said a tzara herself is not so common. The woman I'm going to marry, her husband died, and she's a tzara of it. Like, in other words, it's not such a common thing for it to happen. But the b'nei tzaras, one woman could have 20 children. I mean, whatever, however much you're going to have, right? And then you could have, that could create families and families. You could end up marrying one. But the tzaras is not so common. So we understand why Beis Shammai did not hold back from marrying the children of, the women of Beis Hill. Beis Hill and Beis Shammai might like Nimdu. But why, how could then Beis Hill not hold back from marrying the women of Beis Shammai? According to Shammai, what happened by the tzaras erva? The tzaras erva ends up doing yibum. But they chiv krisis. But that's a chiv of kares. According to Beis Hill, the tzaras erva is a eishazach. It's an erva of kares. So mamzerim, the children all mamzerim. Because since the tzaras abbas is potter, the one who does yibum has a eishazach b'kares. So how could Beis Hill have married the women in Beis Shammai? The whole bunch of mamzerim over there in the school of Shammai. Bechitim are going to say, it's not difficult. I'll tell you why. Beis Hill hold the imams and mechiva krisis. No, they hold like the opinion of Yeshua that there's no mamzer even from a union of krisis, only from chiv Mrs. Bezdin. For example, his mother, his mother-in-law, his daughter-in-law, all those like that. But all those atzaras erva is always going to be, no matter what the original erva was, the atzaras erva is only issa eshesach, which is not those of Mrs. Bezdin. It's only chiv kares, because it's a eshesach shlem mitzvah, which makes it only chiv of kares. Oh, so maybe that's why Basil did not hold back from marrying the children, those women, those girls, from the marriages of Shammai, because it's also not a mamzerim, because it's a union of kares. And union of kares does not create mamzerim. It's not true. Because Rabbi Shloimy said, it says, although that they had this dispute in our Mishnah, which again was part of the chiddush, that even so they married each other. But they agree that there's no mamzer is erev anish kares. But they agree, and we'll explain exactly who's agreeing to who, but that a mamzer is only from that which has a issa erva, and the punishment is kares. What we see from there is that they do agree that mamzerim are from kares. So Elash Mamina, so obviously the Gemara has to say that Lo Yasha, obviously Bisham did not follow like their own opinion. Because if they did, how could the school of Hillel had married the women from Shammai, this family of Shammai? So how could Basil have married them? Obviously they didn't do it because they felt like Basil. So no. Lo'elam asu. Truth is, we could say, and Shammai followed their own opinion. The Maidilu, Beishami notified Basil, you should know that this family is from a Tzaras Erva that had Yibum or Luparashi, and Basil would stay away from them. In other words, they take out the Yichus paper that would say, oh, what happened over here? Oh, that's a Tzaras Erva. Oh, so that this family not married. This was their Do Yisharim. They would check to see welche mishpacha this come from. So wasn't difficult. And it wasn't about to say like this. Because the Tani say, but what does the Sefer of our Mishnah say? The Sefer of our Mishnah says, all the taras that they would say Torah, they would say Tamei, they wouldn't stop doing taras one with the others, meaning they would lend and borrow the vessels one from the other. Even though in this sheet, this Rashi says a different girsa, even though Basil was more machmeh by taras more than by Shammai, still they didn't stop borrowing each other's vessels. So the Gemara says, if you say that they let each other know where it's coming from, okay, we can understand why they didn't stop borrowing vessels from each other, because he says, I want you to know this is our leniency in Taras. I won't use this. And the but if you say they didn't let them know, so we understand that Bishama did not stop borrowing vessels from Basil, because it's Tmeis to Basil, what even Basil holds as Tamei, the Bishama Taras, and according to Bishama is Taran, and therefore, of course, for sure they would borrow Basil because Basil is more machmer. But why would Basil not stop from borrowing from Beishamai? But Taharas the Beishamai, the things that Beishamai considered Tar, the Basil Tamei Nenu. The Basil is Tamei. Obviously they let them know. And therefore that will also explain the halacha of the Reish that was saying that they let them know, and therefore it's not a raya, it could be that Beishamai did follow their own opinion, but they let them know which families they're from. The Gemara asks an interesting question. What's better, the Sefer from the Reish? He's saying, that they let them know. Where do you see more the taharas more than the women? It's the same context. So the Gemara said, I'll tell you what. What would you say that the tzara, the co-wife, has, the word gets out. Oh, it's Zelva got married. Wow, this is Beishamai's unique halacha that it's ever according to Basil. And if they didn't have to let them know, and because everyone knew on their own. So you wouldn't learn from there that they let them know, because you would have thought by tzaras ever they knew on their own. Kamashlan, that's where you have to bring the case of Sefer, where Taharas no one knows or whatever, that you have to let them know. If it lets us know in the Reisha also that they let them know. It's not like they knew by themselves. And Gufa, the Gemara goes back to that statement which we said we're going to clarify. Amar Belazim. He says that although they had disagreed regarding the Tzaras Erva, if she has to do Yibum or actually she's also do Yibum, but Moitin they agree she'ain mamzer, that becoming an illegitimate child is only if there's a prohibition of an erva and there's a punishment of cost. So says the Gemara, man moitim. Who's agreeing to who that there's no mamzeres in this case? Meaning as follows: we have Bisham Basil. Who's agreeing to who? If you think it's the school of Shammai that agree lebeis Hillel, meaning what do you mean agree to Basil? Meaning the women of Beis Hillel. What's going on with the women of Beis Hillel? It's a tzaras erva that's marrying some random guy in the marketplace. And Beis Shammai is agreeing that there's no mamzeros over here. That's saying moedim, even though they disagree, they agree it's not going to be a mamzer. It's because only the mechiva creases. So if you say it's Beis Shammai agreeing to Beis Hill that the women of Beis Hill are not going to be mamzerim, pshita obviously, but they chiva lavin, they're at the most children of a negative prohibition. Yevama marrying Lashuk is a negative prohibition. And of course, of course their children are not going to be mamzerim. So that's not a chiddush at all. So why would you have to say moedim as if you tell me as a chiddush as a ela Beis Hill Beis Shammai? No. So what are you telling me? It's Beis Hill who would agree to Beis Shammai. Meaning Beis Shammai, what's happening is that the women of Beis Shammai, the tzaras elders, are doing evil. They're marrying the brother-in-law. And you tell me Beis Hill is agreeing to Beis Shammai that, okay, it's not going to be a problem on Zem because it's only from Chiba Krisis. What do you mean? He gufa, the tzaras ever is Chiba Krisis. It is a Chiba Krisis. It's a Eishach Shalei Maga Mitzvah. So of course it's going to be Mamzem. So who's agreeing to who? If it's Beis Shammai to Beis Hill, it's not a Chiddush. And Beis Hill to Beis Shammai, it's not true. It would be Mamzem because the women of Beis Shammai were creating Mamzem. Because the Tzaras Elva is not allowed to go ahead and do Yibum according to Beis Hill. Says the Gemara, Beis Shammai Beis Hill. Truth is, it's that Beis Shammai was agreeing to Beis Hill, meaning that the women of Beis Hill, Beis Shammai was telling the Beis Hill that, oh, we agree that your women are not creating Mamzem. So what's the chiddush? But we said, of course, it's chiva lavin. Chiva lavin is not going to create mamzer. It says no. Lofuka midir Rabbi Kiva. It's going to take someone Rabbi Kiva. Dama that he says later on, paragraph Chol Aleph, he holds yesh mamzer mechiva lavin. He holds a mamzer is even from just a negative prohibition. That's what Beis Shammai is going to say. That no, we don't go with Rabbi Kiva. And therefore, although we disagree with you in what the halacha of tzaras ever, but we agree that your children are not going to be mamzerim because it's chiva lavin. Chiva lavin does not create a mamzer. Toshima, the Gemara says, let's bring a raya regarding this shaila that we're having in Beis Shammai, this machlekes, if Beis Shammai osur, did Beis Shammai do like their own opinion or not? The Brisa says, Av bishanech Beis Shammai still, although they disagree with tzaris, which is the halacha of our Mishnah, if a tzaris elva is mutter for yibum or osur for yibum, and bachayis, and that they disagree regarding the sisters, which is a case later on in Perek Dal Arachim, which if you have 4 brothers, 2 of the brothers are married to 2 sisters, which we know that when they die, it creates a chesed kukasai. Now both of the remaining brothers are forbidden to marry any one of them because of chesed kukasai. So the machlekes of Shabbos said that b'di'evet, if the 2 brothers did marry each one of the women, if they allowed to remain married to them or not. That's one more machlekes b'Shabbos and beget yashan. Beget yashan is any time if a man wrote a get to his wife, but he secluded with her after he already wrote the get. There's a machlekes in Beis Shammai in such a case that it's still kosher not because of a gezerah that maybe they're going to say that the get was before the son. Because if they seclude and they have a child, so that means say the get was before the son, even though it really wasn't, they just wrote it before, but he gave it afterwards. But they're going to say the get was before, and that means to say that this child is from a forbidden union. Ubesafik eshes ish. What's this machlekes Beis Shammai held regarding safik eshes? This Rashi actually makes 2 interpretations. The Gemara later on, Perek Beis Shammai Daf Kuf Zayin brings that Beis Shammai says that the halacha of miyun, of a refusal of a minor, is only if she was only engaged. But if she was married, she's not do miyun. So the whole, no, if she was married to that man, she's allowed to do miyun. Now Rashi says a minor that could do miyun is called safek eshes ish. Because maybe she can do miyun, and maybe she was never married. So in general, a minor is considered safek eshes ish, and that's referring to that machlekes. Rashi brings another interpretation, which Taisa doesn't like, that when a shchidmera, someone on his deathbed, writes to his wife, this is you get from today if I'm going to die from this illness, so all those days he's called the safek eshes ish, because we don't know if he's going to die from this illness. If he does, then it's a get from now. So all those days, she might be an eshes ish, might not. He might not die from that illness. Now Rashi brings, although there's no explicit machlekes Beis Shammai regarding that case, but he says, obviously you have to say that they did disagree about this, because it's the same thing of the machlekes when he divorces his wife and he stays with her in the same inn, which actually the Gemara is going to bring the next case in the Brisa, which that's why Tosfos says he doesn't like this, because that's the same case. But Beis Shammai hold that we don't say Heinei Nedi Yichud Heinei Nedi. We don't say the fact that they were secluded means that they had bia. So then she wouldn't need another get from him. Beis Shammai holds that no, the fact that they were secluded, we have witnesses for that, that means that they had bia, and therefore that's a kedushin again, therefore you have to have a second get. That's a machlekes Beis Shammai regarding safek eshes ish, regarding where we see that this halacha of the safek, if that requires another get or not, that's one case. Which really is the same case as the Gemara brings the gittin on Daf Ayin Tes and Hazayrut. that.
Eventually, if he dies, then you know she was a grusha. If he doesn't die, then she wasn't a shish.
Right. But b'shas ma'isa, right. What's the halacha of that
case? Question,
well, if him and her,
if it's
even him and her, right? Yeah, but a child with him and her, right? If she's divorced already, then she's forbidden to him.
Right. So we'll find
but
out.
Right. But this, then this machlekes regarding this case of megarish shesish to belong mipundik. And what's the case of that? There again, what's that machlekes? Yeah. But Rashi likes the first case anyway of suffocation shesish, is that of a kitana that could be ma'anis. But then there's the case of megarish shesish to belong mipundik. If let's say he divorces his wife and he sleeps with her in the same motel, does he have to write a second get or not? As we just referenced from the previous case of suffocation ish in the second interpretation of Rashi. We have a machlekes which we know regarding in the beginning of Mesechus Kedushin, that regarding getting engaged to a woman. B'shamai say it's b'kesef or b'shavah, which really means, Rashi explains, a dinner or worth a dinner. B'sul holds it's a pruta on the shavah pruta, which a dinner is a kesef. Syria pruta is that of copper. So even though we have all these machlekes regarding that of marriage and divorce, which is related to this idea about this marital relationship, still they didn't stop marrying each other. This comes to teach that there was a certain love and friendship that they had between the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai. It says you should love truth and peace. So although there's truth, there's also peace. And therefore they found a way of coexisting and intermarrying in each other's families, even though they have all these machlekes regarding halachas of gittin and kedushin. Shimon, he said, wait, but nimnu heim min avadai. They did hold back from the definitive, what they each held is definitively also by the other one. But Safik did not hold back from that which in the case of Safik. Now Rashi explains, at this point the Gemara thinks that what we're talking about is that an isra of Safik, for example, like someone divorced his wife and then they slept overnight in the same motel, where that's a suffix, where maybe he had relations with her l'shem kedushin. So for that, it's regarding such a suffix of isser, where then they were not makbid with the other one's opinion that held that was a problem. For that they weren't, but only when there was a definitive isser. Says the Gemara as follows: if you say that Bishamai did like their own opinion, therefore they held back from the other one's opinion of definitive isser, like Rabbi Shimon said, because they definitively did like their own opinion. But if you say that they didn't follow their own opinion, why did one camp hold back from the other camp, even by a definitive isser, if, again, Beishamai didn't do like their own opinion? Obviously, Beishamai did like their own opinion, which, again, is coming to resolve the machlekes we had on the previous daf, on top of this Amid, on Amid Aleph, that we said that with the machlekes and Beishamai did like their own opinion. But you could prove from here that Beishamai obviously did like their own opinion. Says, well, but is that logical? Even if you're going to say that Beishamai followed their own opinion, we could understand them why Beisil held back from doing like Beishamai, because like we said, the chiva creases ninu, mamzerim him leBeisil, because the women of Beishamai were marrying the tzaras, were marrying the yavam, which is a chiv kars, and the creating children of mamzerim. But Beishamai, my name is Beisil. But why would Beishamai hold back from marrying the women of Beisil? But they chiv alavin and kshem. They're the sons of chiv alavin, and they can be kosher. So how do you even understand? Even going to say that asu that Beishamai did like their own opinion, they still wouldn't understand. That still not explain the brisa why Beisil held back from marrying the women of Beishamai. Which Tais asked, he said, "What do you mean? It's not only tzaras erva. Tzaras erva writes only chiv alavin. But what's with the case of mima enes and the case of shavah kesef? What do you mean? Shavah kesef. If let's say these are all different machlekes that could create mamzerim, so that itself should have been reasons why Beishamai would hold back from marrying women himself. If a woman got engaged with a pruta, according to Beishamai, it's not a kedushin. So of course it creates situations of problematic relationships. So this brings from the read that but still the brisa sounds like the primary reason is from that of tsaras, and that's why we're asking that should not be a reason why Beishamai would hold back from marrying the women of Beisil. So the Gemara says that's not difficult, because that's the number of Nachman Yitzchak. As we'll see what that's referring to. But here also, just that we said that the Beishamai held back from the marrying the women of Beisil, was because the Tzara herself. In other words, yes, Beis Shammai held back from marrying the women of Hill because they couldn't marry the Tsar Sabas without Chalitza. So you could say that Beis Shammai did like their own opinion. So, and you're asking me, but even according to that, why Beis Shammai hold back from marrying women of Hill? I'll tell you, because there's the Tzaras Erva. They couldn't marry every woman from Beis Hill. Maybe you're going to be marrying a Tzaras Erva. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, so Maishlam and Avadai. So if everyone did like their own opinions, so why is Reb Shimon saying that each one held back from marrying the definitive Esther from the other one's camp? The Isuru, because that's a prohibition. But Savik Nami Isuru, what do you mean? Savik is also Savik. It's a Deraisa, so you have to go Savik Derais L'chumra. So why that did not hold back? So the Gemara says, you're right. Don't say from the Savik. Eleima min hastam, meaning unspecified. As long as they weren't notified from the Shadchan, from the other camp, that there was a problematic for the other ones minhagim, they didn't hold back, because most definitely if it was from those, the Maidilu Uparshu, because then they would let them know and they would separate. But when they didn't, that's when they didn't hold back. So again, the Gemara says, then wait a second. So what's Rabbi Shimon telling us more than Tanakama said? The Ahava V'rei is Noigin said that they had love and friendship one with the other, and therefore they would let them know and they would separate. Hainarisha, that's the same thing as the Tanakama. Tanakama already said this, and what's Rabbi Shimon adding on more by saying they would be purged from the Vadai and not from the Stam. If Stam doesn't mean Safik, it's just Stam. But that's the same thing. They would let them know. And the Tanakama already said they would let them know. Hakamashman says, the Gemara, yeah, you're right. This is what comes to tell us. The Kul Reb Shimon, it's all Reb Shimon, you're right. It's all Reb Shimon, and there's no Tanakama Reb Shimon. And that the B'Shimon would do like their own, and that each one would let them know when it's problematic for the other one's halachas. Gemara says, try to bring another riot that B'Shimon did like their own opinion. Rabbi Shloimy again, because that's a machlekes we had in the Gemara in between Rav and Shmuel, if they did like their own or not. Let's bring a right that they did do. But Rabbi Shloimy, he says, "Hey halacha zu Ravachas Lisol." Says, what are we going to do over here for this halacha of the tzaras erva? Meaning, what's the shaila? Nasik Beis Shammai. If we should do like that of Beis Shammai, havlad mamzal to Beis Hill. But that's going to make you can't have the tzaras ever marry. But according to Beis Hill, that's the children of mamzer, because it's chiba krisis. Eish actually magam mitzvah. Nasik Beis Hill. We can do like Beis Hill to say that they can be to let them go without chalitza. Havlad pagum to Beis Shammai. What does that mean? The vlad is going to be a pagum according to Beis Shammai. As Rashi explained, if the husband was a kohen, and that makes that the children are going to be pasal for kahuna, because although b'nei chiv al-avin are kosher for the kihila, but they're considered halalim regarding kahuna, because as the Gemara is going to learn later on next daf, we learn that from a kavachana from Aman l'Kohen Gadol, which is just a chiv al-av, and yet the union of Aman l'Kohen Gadol is going to create halalim. So therefore, over here, the tzaras elva, if she goes and marries some person from the shuk, that negative prohibition is going to create, if the husband is a kohen, that's chalalim. Kohen's marrying someone that's a chiv alav to him. Amal kohen gadol is only actually for kohen gadol, and still it's going to create chalalim. So here where Yevamos Daf is a chiv alav for everyone. If a kohen marries her, that's going to create chalalim. So that's not a great option either, because according to Beis Shammai, that's creating the children as pagumim, that the chalalim, they can't marry kahanim. So Rabbi Shloimy came up with a chap. He says, let's try to make harmony between the schools of Shammai. Let's make that the tzaras erva, as we continue to have Tezvav Manal, she choltzes blemis yamas. Every tzaras erva should have chalitza, not yibum. And then let them marry some other person, according to everyone that's going to work out. According to Beis Hill, you let them go, you didn't do yibum, so there's no chorus from the Eshazach. According to Beis Shammai, who holds that you have to do either yibum or chalitza, he did chalitza. But like his people, but they didn't get a chance to finish this amendment ad shenitra fa'asha until the moment was lost, and they didn't get a chance to do this. But Rabbi Shloimy says it's not a good idea anyway. He says manas l'tzaras harishonis. What are you going to do with the original tzaras me'ata from now? I mean, in other words, those that already did like Beis Shammai, that did yibum, which you're telling me that their children are going to be considered as mamzerim, if you now say that you now do yibum, how is that going to help? To say from now, Mikan La'aba, but what do you do with, for all these years that the school of Shammai, you're telling me, no, you're not doing Yibum. So you're now making them retroactively as Mamzer. So that's what the Brisa says. Says the Gemara, if you say the school of Shammai did like their own opinion, and the Manas says, what are we going to do? Because they were following their own opinion, now they're Mamzer. If you say they didn't do their own opinion, my Manas, what are you saying? What are we going to do? The Shammai never followed their own opinion. So the Gemara rejects the riot. Amar Nachman Yitzchak says, we need it actually the other way around. The tzaras of Beis Hill, who had married other people, because Beis Hill holds their pater from Yibum Chalitza, Manasseh is not going on the children, because even according to Beis Hill, they're kosher for the Kehila, like like we said, because they're only chiv alaven. We're going into tzara herself. Umanasa hachikama. What Rabbi Shloimy was saying was hanach tzara the Beis Hillel, which everyone, maybe Beis Shammai did not follow their own opinion. Maybe they did follow like opinion, and so everyone was following Beis Hillel. That the tzara the Beis Hillel went and they married a person from the shuk leBeis Shammai. But according to the school of Shammai, to fulfill their own, because you're trying to tell us like let's get the best of Shammai and Hill. But if you want to get the best of Shammai, who holds that you need to do chalitza, hey chanavelu, what are you going to do with them now? I mean, those women who were tzar's erva. So all these years, everyone was following Hill, and they went and married other people. And you're saying no. Rabbi says, come on, Shammai holds that these women are usher, they're tzavis. They need yibum chalitza. So you're going to say, let's do chalitza. So chaltzu? Now we're going to go ahead and do these women who are married already 20 years. You're going to say, okay, Rabbi Yochanan made a psak. The tzar's ervas required chalitza. But minasa kavrei, they're going to be disgusted on their husbands. Because, what, we need chalitza? What's going on? You mean to say I was married to this woman who really all along, really was zakuk to her brother-in-law? It's going to become disgusted to him. It's saying she was forbidden to me. And you can say, okay, let them be disgusted, but still we want to be masakin, that they should have at least the psak of Shammai. But the Ruchel, the pasuk of the Mishlei, the path of Torah are pleasant ways, and all its alleyways, all its different paths are that of peace. And therefore, that was the time of Shem lived, that you cannot fulfill that of Beis Shammai, because the women that were married up until now, you're going to require those tzaris to have chalitza. That would not be appropriate, because the men are going to be disgusted on their wives. But again, it's not a raya. It could be that Beis Shammai did not follow their own opinion. So what's Manasseh? Manasseh is going on the tzaris of Beis Hillel, who were married up until now, that everyone did follow like Beis Hillel. What do you do with them? You're going to tell me that they require chalitza. You can't do chalitza right now. Therefore, it's not going to help Lamafreya, and therefore it's not a good idea to go ahead and be masakin this thing of requiring chalitza, but it's all the same. But thank you to any time for hosting us.